Oh, happy early Halloween. It's the spooky edition of Fantasy Football Live here on Yahoo Sports. Plenty to get you caught up on. Don't worry, we're actually going to cover Kent Fantasy Football. But yes, we are going to do it looking just like this over the course of the next 90 minutes. I'm Jason Fitz, hanging out with Matt Harmon, hanging out with Justin Boone, hanging out with Chris Allen. Matt Harmon, should I call you Bobby Boucher and say you got a good accent for us? What we doing?
I don't know if I can attempt the accent, but yes, I am 1998 Bourbon Bowl MVP Bobby Boucher because, folks, I really am the real-life water boy. I'm the industry's foremost water enthusiast, hydration expert. So, yes, I think it's a fitting costume for me here this Halloween.
That is perfectly done. Chris Allen, I had high expectations, and somehow you exceeded them. This is epic work by you.
Well, if we're keeping it in the 90s, like what Harmon was just talking about, I'm going as Will Smith in Men in Black because I know for a lot of the takes that not just myself, but the rest of us on the show are going to have, we're probably going to need a neuralizer to make folks forget anything that we say on this program after we're done right now. So I'm just getting prepared for all the stuff we're going to say right now and all the football we're going to see later on today.
The world is already trying to forget my zebra. By the way, I just felt like a referee was too derivative, and that's what I do every day on this show. So I figured I'd just go more inflatable referee. So I'm a zebra for you. I felt good about this one. I felt good about it until I actually tried to figure out how we're going to do a show for the next 90 minutes. But we'll see. The zebra might swallow me up. Justin Boone, did you manage to bring Flutie Flakes to life?
Real life Flutie Flakes. Absolutely. We got the box here. We always joke about it in the background. My Bills fandom is taking it to a new level here, and I'm just like you trying to figure out how I'm going to do a show like this because I did not think through that part of it, but it's going to be a fun one to try to get through.
And the entire time, I'm just going to be singing Men in Black in the back of my head. For the next 90 minutes, we're here to get you ready. We'll get your lineup set. You can get involved. All you got to do is use the hashtag AskFFL. Super easy to do that. Not super easy to talk in this costume. Drop a comment in the YouTube chat, especially about the costumes. Let's have a little bit of fun for 90 minutes. All the way up until kickoff, we're going to be right here. You can also get involved on Twitter, X. Let's get you to the actives and inactives. Some big names here. Everybody's got their eye on. We just got the news. Drake London is inactive today. Tyler Algier active. Dalton Kincaid active. Lamar Jackson, as we found out over the last 48 hours, inactive on this one. Let's take a look at this with Drake London. Harmon, what's this do to all of us?
It makes me particularly sad. I've got multiple Drake London lineups that I need to adjust. At some point here over the next 90 minutes, I got to figure out a plan. I had a mild backup plan, and now I feel like all of those plans look a lot worse now that they're actually going to have to be put into practice. So I think if you were somebody, again, like me, because my life is terrible, who planned on emergency starting Kirk Cousins because you were planning on starting Lamar Jackson in your Superflex League, you got to maybe lower those expectations. You got to probably bump up some Darnell Mooney, who is, like we've seen the splits where Darnell Mooney doesn't play, Drake London goes off. I think that can also be used in the inverse because this is pretty much a funnel offense where they don't have a lot of depth. So Mooney's a guy who does, at least to me, get into that like wide receiver 3, low end wide receiver 2 conversation.
I just love the thought of the tailgate trash talking suddenly going from we've got Penix and Drake to we've got Kirk and Mooney. It's fine. It's fine. All right, so let's get to some fantasy trick or treat. We're going to take one treat, one trick from everyone. All right, we'll start with Justin Boone. Justin, because we like the good first. Give me a trick.
I mean, for me, the trick here this week is Rachaad White. And we saw the first 2 games when he took over for Bucky Irving. He absolutely went off, was a top 10 fantasy back in both those contests. Last week, it wasn't as good, but this guy has been really, really strong this year. I think he's playing his best football that he's ever played in his career. He looks like a better running back now, so he's filling this role really well. And I think he deserves to get consideration here as a strong top 10 play again because he's going up against the Saints defense that's given up the 11th most fantasy points to running backs, at least 100 scrimmage yards and or multiple touchdowns to 6 different backs already this year. So Rachaad White is a fantastic play and is a lot higher than some names that he normally is behind.
All right, so then give me the opposite of that.
I mean, the downside here, we're going to go Rhamondre Stevenson, and he's going up against the Browns. And I know Rhamondre last week had a great game. He has taken over that backfield. 90 plus scrimmage yards, scores a touchdown, is getting all the work there. And yet this week, he's got to go against the Browns. It's not the Titans defense anymore. He's got to go against Cleveland. They're giving up the fewest fantasy points to running backs. They're giving up the fifth fewest rushing yards, the third fewest rushing touchdowns. This is not a great matchup for him. It kind of makes him into like a low-end RB2, high-end RB3, but he's really just a touchdown or bust guy this week.
All right, Harmon, let's go to you next, but let's start with the trick. Give him the bad first before we get to the good.
Yeah, the trick this week, I don't think it's got to be Jauan Jennings, San Francisco 49ers wide receiver here for me. And this is not really all that much about Jauan Jennings, who I do think has played a little bit worse this year than he did last season in isolation. But we also know he's dealing with multiple injuries. But I think at this point, being the lone guy in the wide receiver room, you're kind of starting to see the toll taken on him in terms of just being that level of player. Good player, but not ready to be like the number one. But again, this to me is less about him and the fact that it's a difficult secondary matchup. I'm looking at Mac Jones, who ranks 11th in EPA per dropback when he is not pressured and 29th when he is pressured. I just imagine going against that fierce Houston pass rush with the 49ers offensive line. I just imagine they're going to put the ball in Christian McCaffrey's hand as a running back over and over and over again like they did last week to a lot of success to try to take that pressure off Mac Jones. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of volume available for Jennings in this game.
All right, then in that case, give me the peanut butter, the chocolate, the Mike to the Ike, the start of the burst. What's the treat?
Ooh, Mama says we're looking for a treat today from Odunze, Chicago Bears wide receiver. I know he's had a bit of a downward swing the last couple weeks coming out of the bye, but that really has nothing to do with Odunze and how he is playing. I still think he looks excellent out there. A couple of miscues between him and Caleb Williams a game, but that's going to be the state of where it is with these two young players getting used to a new offense. But he's still one of the best wide receivers against man coverage this season. The Ravens, their opponent this week, runs a lot of man coverage. So I think we see a little bit of a bounce back from Caleb Williams from this passing game in general, and Odunze remains the number one threat in this offense. So if you've been a little disappointed by Rome the last 2 weeks, I think you're in for a nice treat this week.
All right, Chris, let's get to you. Give us that toothbrush in the candy sack, the trick that nobody wants. What you got?
So this, at least for me in week 8, my concern is going to be for Chris Olave. And the trick is, can he repeat what he just did in week 7? And now that's not a knock against Olave. We all know that since he's been drafted by the Saints, he's been one of the, at least in the top 12, top 24 discussion. And it's not really a concern for him, but his situation. I mean, over 30% of the targets in 4 of 7 games. And finally starting to get some of those downfield looks from Spencer Rattler after having around an 8 to 9 air yard average depth of target through weeks 1 through 5. And seeing him start to get more of those downfield shots, that's what fantasy managers want to see. But going up against the Bucs defense or this week, seeing with Eric McCoy, their starting center, out, Spencer Rattler already around the 7th highest pressure rate so far through 7 to 8 games. And we know how Todd Bowles can call enough of a tough defense in order to get pressure in Spencer Rattler's face and potentially limiting what we would expect out of a wide receiver like Chris Olave.
All right, then let's go to the opposite. Give me the Rolo. Give me the Skittles. What's your treat?
I'm looking at Zay Flowers. Now, this would have looked a lot better if Lamar Jackson was going to be under center versus Snoop Huntley. But at least in this game, going up against the Bears defense, now they're going to be without Kyler Gordon, without Tyreek Stevenson. I mean, the Bears were already 13th in PPR points per game allowed to wide receivers. And Flowers right now, I mean, even without Lamar Jackson in the lineup, he has been showing up from an opportunity standpoint as the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver 1. Over 25% of the targets in 3 straight weeks, 10 targets in the week 6 game, and that was with Lamar Jackson not in the lineup. So if there's any Ravens pass catcher that I trust in this game going against Chicago, maybe Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely because of the National Tight Ends Day that we're all trying to observe. But still, if there's going to be a volume play that you can try and stick to in this game, it should be Zay Flowers.
If there has ever been a time that I wish this show had hidden cameras on each of us during the next portion, I wish it was right now. Justin Boone is our rankings expert. Boone is going to go with his Flutie Flakes, and he's going to tweak his rankings with breaking news on Drake London today. Let's just see how that works when he's inside a box. And he'll be back in a few minutes to get you caught up on the last minute changes happening. But in the meantime, let's get to some last minute pickups. There are some players that are still out there and available. So, Chris, we'll stick with you. Who's somebody that's out there under 50% roster that can still be added before kickoff?
Something of a volatile play, but I'm going to go with Troy Franklin, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. And the hope is that Bo Nix doesn't try and do the same thing he did last week and have all of his production in the fourth quarter. This is more of a back and forth thing throughout. But still, Franklin right now through 6-7 weeks, not a true wide receiver 2 for the Broncos in terms of how often he's out there on the field. Just about a 78% route rate, but his targets have been on the rise. I mean, from a 12% target share up to 23% just this past week. But more of a volatile play, but it's the game environment that we want to try and target. I mean, going up against the Cowboys secondary, Trayvon Diggs is out on IR. Donovan Wilson, their safety, is also going to be out. So at least from a fantasy points potential and our expectation for this potential shootout match between the Broncos and the Cowboys, if you need a wide receiver help for this week, Troy Franklin is at least a viable option for you.
All right, what about you, Harmon? Give me somebody that's still out there that can be picked up.
Yeah, let me tell you what, Fitzy. If D'Amico Ryans, Nick Caley, and the boys do not play Jaylin Noel on a full complement of snaps this week, I'm going to go as crazy as Bobby Boucher did when they said water was not as good as Gatorade. Give me a freaking break. Jaylin Noel's got to be on the field for this Houston Texans offense. He's only 8% rostered right now. I think you can pick him up. I think he's a viable flex play this week, but even still, I want you guys to kind of pick him up and just stick him on the end of your bench and see what happens here, because this is a talented player who, as soon as he did get the opportunity last week, which was way too late in the game, starting Braxton Berrios over him was one of the most mind-numbing decisions I've ever seen, at least for this season. That's saying something. Football's a long game, but certainly for this season, one of the most insane things I've seen. This is an explosive guy. D'Amico Ryans said it after the game himself that he is one of, if not one of their most explosive players on offense. It's not the greatest matchup in the world, although San Francisco is banged up in the secondary. We saw them rally last week, but are they going to be able to do that 2 weeks in a row? I don't know about that. So this vertical slot option who can make plays, who can quickly separate, I think he's in line for a nice week this week and should be a feature part of the offense going forward.
All right, gentlemen, let's check the chat. Let's see what questions we can help people with that are out here. We see you in YouTube. Thanks for hanging out with us on the show. As always, the first question comes from Stuart GB, who says, London and Penix were supposed to be my cheat codes for this week against Miami. Every time I have a player against Miami, they're out with injury. Not really, just, I just feel you on this, Stuart. I feel you. Chris, like any comforting words you want to give our buddy?
Well, like we were talking earlier about last-minute guys you could potentially pick up. I mean, I would assume Mooney might be out there in a couple of leagues, and to Harmon's point earlier, if you do need somebody that might be able to take advantage of Miami's defense, it would be Darnell Mooney and the amount of rapport that he showed with Kirk Cousins throughout most of the 2024 season. So, yep, tough out in terms of the amount of injuries, but if there's a way that you can salvage this and find somebody that could take advantage of this matchup, Darnell Mooney might be the guy that you can pick up for Week 8.
All right, get the next comment coming in. Can't really see the name. I can't pronounce it for you, but I'm sorry. Kittle or Kincaid, full PPR. Bobby Boucher, what say you?
Yeah, we got to go with George Kittle on this one. I get it. He had the 0 last week. You just got to eat that 0 and move on. Dalton Kincaid, nice player. I do think he is a credible starting tight end right now, but he's not playing a full complement of snaps. We know that's just the deal with Kincaid. So for me, I'm taking the proven high-end talent in an offense that should be able to get him the football with Mac Jones under pressure, getting those quick passes out to the tight end. I think that's going to be part of the game plan this week.
The next one comes from Matt Bryan, who says, Javonte or Swift for flex? What say you, Will Smith?
I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift today. The only concern for him is going up against the Ravens defense. They are getting a little bit healthier this week coming out of their bye, but how well that the Chicago Bears rush offense looked this past week. I mean, putting up close to or over 200 rushing yards in total up against the Commanders. Solid outing, and the way that we would hope that Ben Johnson coming down from Detroit would help the Bears start to evolve their offense. Not just the aerial attack, but also the rush. So for this one, I'll say DeAndre Swift, but it's fairly close.
All right, let's by the way, the chat's just letting you know, Harmon. Jingorp says, LOL, okay, we need the entire pod in Bobby Boucher voice then. I mean, the people have spoken, Harmon. Like, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but if you want to maybe work on a Bobby Boucher voice, like, the people would take it.
This water is from a glacier in Alaska. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that for 90 minutes, but I can at least do it every now and again. That's a lot. That's a lot of glaciers right there.
See, America spoke. Harmon answered.
So
that is what I'm talking about. That is well done. All right, come on. When we come back, a frightening number of points could be on the table at Mile High. We'll figure out who's going to feast between the Cowboys and Broncos. We'll get into that coming up next. Spooky. Welcome back to a Halloween edition of Fantasy Football Live. I'm Jason Fitz, hanging out right now with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen. We're going to continue breaking down the action that you need. Yes, we will be in costume all the way up until kickoff at 1 o'clock. Let's get to the game that everybody's looking at for feasts. The Commanders at the Cowboys. You see it there. The Broncos favored by 3.5. The over-under on this one, 51. Matt Harmon, give me somebody you think is going to feast in this game.
I think it's Javonte Williams in a revenge game against his former team. Look, he can say whatever he wants about how he feels about this, that, and the other. He wants to go out there and prove that they made a mistake letting him go, even if the grass was greener on the other side for him in Dallas. And look, it's a tougher matchup. The Broncos defense is obviously good, but this Cowboys rushing game, I still feel like people aren't giving it the credit that it deserves for how good it has been. Right now, so far, among running backs that have touched the ball 50-plus times, Javonte Williams trails only Bijan Robinson in terms of yards after contact per rush attempt. So he is adding onto his own, the ecosystem and what's being given to him from a blocking perspective, because he also has one of the lowest stuff rates in the league. They're consistently getting a good push with this offensive line. Javonte Williams is making more of it with his tackle breaking ability. He looks good out there. He's playing on passing downs. Guys, I think if we redrafted today, Javonte Williams might be a top 6 to 7 running back off the board. So that's a guy, even in a tough matchup, I still have really high expectations for.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that's one of the most under-talked about pickups. Everybody loves to trash what the Cowboys have done wrong. Javonte Williams was a home run for this team. But that's why when I think feast in this game, I actually look at George Pickens, because I agree with everything you just said, Harmon. So my logic is the Broncos are going to try and take away the one thing that they think they can't take away, which is running the football, which is then going to put part of that Broncos defense susceptible in the back end. It's not going to be Surtain taking on CD, which is how I presume that's going to go for the most part, which means CD Lamb becomes the next portion of it. We keep trying to compare this Cowboys offense to last year's Bengals offense. That's not a fair comp, because this Cowboys offense can run the football. And more that people start to realize that, more assets will have to be given to slowing down the run. When you do that, I'm just looking squarely at your wide receiver 2 in your offense and saying, who the hell is going to be able to stop George Pickens? I think the answer here is nobody. Not only do I think the Cowboys cover in this game, by the way, I think the Cowboys win this game outright, and they win this game outright in large part because George Pickens has a big day. Chris, give me what you got on this one.
Well, that works out for my pick in this game, because if Pickens is going to be the one catching balls downfield and forcing the Broncos to throw the ball downfield as well when they get the ball, Courtland Sutton should be the beneficiary of that type of game environment. Because even though throughout 6-7 games for Courtland Sutton, he hasn't been the wide receiver one that really we would expect coming into 2025. Just a 21% target rate, which is 29th among active wide receivers. But still, when Bo Nix is looking downfield in most passing situations, that's when he looks to Courtland Sutton. Obvious passing situations, 30.9% of the team's targets are going towards Sutton. When Bo Nix is either under pressured or blitz, he's first on the team, 27.3% of the targets. And even in the red zone, even though he's behind Troy Franklin, the guy I was talking about earlier, 22% of the targets are going towards Courtland Sutton. We know that the Cowboys secondary is one that we would like to target from a pass game perspective, with the number of quarterbacks that have gone up against them and perform well, which leads to their receivers also performing well in the box scores. So if there's, talking about Troy Franklin earlier, if there's a wide receiver one that I would want to target from the Broncos side, it has to be Courtland Sutton.
All right, gentlemen, let's keep going on, and now we're going to take a look at spooky starters. People, I mean, it's bye week help. We all know that. Like, all you guys had your juggernaut Raiders offensive guys that can't play this weekend, so now you got to find somebody else to fill in. Okay, let me dream for a minute. Matt Harmon, give me somebody that's a spooky starter for you because of the bye weeks.
I was going to say, is that suit cutting off the circulation to your brain talking about the Raiders that way? I don't know about that, but listen, a guy I do think can actually help you out during the bye weeks, it is Alec Pierce, Colts wide receiver. Yeah, I talked about him last week, and I talked about him again this week, because I think it's kind of crazy, almost regardless of how I feel about Pierce as a player. It's kind of crazy that a guy who plays for one of the best offenses in the NFL, almost on a every down basis, is rostered in just 25% of Yahoo leagues. This guy, I think, actually, though, has made some steps in his game from an evolution perspective. He's looking a little bit different. Yeah, he's still averaging over 20 air yards per target, which is insanely high. However, he's making more of those plays over the middle of the field on, kind of those in-breaking routes that are critical to modern offenses right now. So it's less of just the streaky, kind of fluky, sacrificial X receiver stuff. But even if it was just doing the downfield thing for Alec Pierce, great matchup this week. He goes against a Titans team who ranks number 1 in yards per target allowed on throws of 10 to 19 air yards, and 5th in terms of yards per target on throws of 20 plus air yards. So I think Pierce can make some plays for you downfield in a bye week spot start situation this week.
All right, Chris, give me a spooky starter.
Isaiah Pacheco, running back for the Chiefs, and I know a lot of folks have probably been spooked out of keeping him in their starting lineup with how poor he's played, and also how often they've seen more of Kareem Hunt barreling his way into the end zone for Kansas City. But Kareem Hunt, I know he's going to be active for the Chiefs when they play against the Commanders, but I think it's fair to wonder how much he's going to be used, especially since the Chiefs are going to be home favorites. Hunt himself, he's working through that bone bruise in his knee. So potentially for having a condensed backfield should lend itself to Pacheco getting some more work in this game. And we've seen it so far over the past couple of games. Up to 50% of the team's carries over the past 2 games, targets around 8%, but more importantly, being used on more than half of the team's short yardage rushing attempts. So if this is also going to be a Chiefs offense that we know is back to their high scoring ways, 81 total red zone plays. That's since week 4. That's the most in the league. And we've also seen the Commanders get beat up on the ground with Josh Jacobs, Bijan Robinson, DeAndre Swift, Javonte, but all of those guys scoring enough points from a rushing and touchdown standpoint that they should be at least solid options this week. So while Pacheco doesn't have the same talent as those guys, the opportunity in the situation lend itself to him being at least a decent spot start for week 8.
All right, Harmon's got water to pass out. Chris has memories to erase. We'll let you guys take a second, do your other jobs, and then in the meantime, we will bring Doug Flutie and the Flutie Flakes back as Boone comes back to help us break ranks. This is where somebody might be flying up or down the rankings based on the breaking news. I cannot believe this is our side-by-side shot, but I'm here for it. Flutie Flakes and Boone, what do you got as breaking ranks?
Well, first off, Fitz, I mean, I made some mistakes with this costume because trying to update everything in this was pretty ridiculous, but it's all right. We're making it through here. The first one, Darnell Mooney up to wide receiver 21. It's fairly obvious. The Drake London injury that popped up late in the week. We weren't sure if he was going to play or be limited. The fact that he's out puts Mooney into that number 1 role. And I mean, Mooney's been pretty good. Like, you look back to last year when Kirk Cousins was under center, when he was starting, from week 2 to week 15, Darnell Mooney was a top 30 fantasy receiver in fantasy points per game. So he can definitely get it done. We saw him last week when he came back from injury. He had 3 catches for 68 yards. Like, this is a guy that can certainly produce in that role. And the matchup with Miami is certainly nothing to be scared about. So I like Mooney as a pretty solid play this week. Now we got to go to the downside of things. Zay Flowers dropping down to wide receiver 22. And I know there's injuries in the Bears secondary. I know on paper it might look like a good matchup, but Lamar Jackson is not playing in this game. So earlier in the week, I had this guy ranked much, much higher, but with Lamar Jackson out, you just can't trust him. It's not the same kind of play. So I'm moving him way down here into the range of, just kind of the risky, almost needs a touchdown to come through. And he's not a guy that scores a ton of touchdowns. And with Tyler Huntley under there, Tyler Huntley does favor the running backs and the tight ends in the passing game. So I think we got to bump down all the wide receivers for the Ravens this week. And then the last one here, Dalton Schultz up to tight end 8. And with so many injuries, it's another team that's just been crushed by injuries. We got Nico Collins out. We got Christian Kirk out. Do we trust the young receivers in Houston? Does Houston trust their young receivers? Because they haven't really put these guys in a position to excel. Like, we've seen Xavier Hutchinson out there. We've seen Braxton Berrios out there getting fairly significant run, even though they aren't that productive. So I think the guy who is going to be productive is their veteran tight end who they trust. And the last couple weeks, 5 catches for 60 yards. Last week, 9 catches for 98 yards. We know he can produce on volume. I'm not overly excited about the talent, but you can play him as a top 10 option this week in a Houston offense that just doesn't really have a lot of guys to throw to, unfortunately.
We've got plenty of guys to throw to here. By the way, great graphics work by our team behind the scenes, getting everybody in Halloween costumes. That is well done. Let's bring everybody back together. We're going to run a little bit of hurry-up offense. We're going to get a bunch of your questions in. We do 25 seconds on the clock, and then we figure out if we can get questions answered. Indy from Vegas says, need to start one between Waddle, Jennings, and Hubbard. # make your pick. Matt Harmon, what do you think?
Yeah, Mama says we're going with Jaylen Waddle on this one. I know he had a bit of a down week. He's dealing with a little bit of injury, but when he's out there, he's a high-volume target. Again, a little bit skeptical of Jauan Jennings this week, and Chuba Hubbard's still part of that backfield committee. I think they could run pretty well on the Bills, but I'd go Waddle here.
All right, next up, Joshua says, so tough here. Odunze, Tet, or Chase Brown, full PPR. What do you think, Chris?
I'll go Rhamondre on this one. It's either Odunze or Chase Brown for me, but I'm the biased Bengals guy here. But Rhamondre, while he was targeted a bit more downfield, creating some tougher catches for him, and the Ravens secondary is getting a little bit healthier, I'd say in this matchup, with the amount of volume that he has been seeing, I would say Odunze is the best out of that bunch.
All right, the next question comes from King. King with the next question, and he says, McLaurin or Tez, Rodgers or Field, what say you, Boone?
Oh, this one is very, very tough. I'd want to play Tez, but I think you have to go with McLaurin at this point, just based on the upside he could bring, even though it's a tough matchup and even though he doesn't have his QB. And then, amongst these two quarterbacks, it's another coin flip. I would go with Fields. It is so risky. If you want the safer play, I think it's Rodgers in the revenge game, but Fields with his legs in a good matchup, I think he can get it done.
All right, get one in here from Jake. This will go to Harmon. Jake says, Brashard Smith or Chuba Hubbard? What do you think?
I think it's getting a little too cute to play Brashard Smith over Chuba Hubbard. Like I mentioned, this Panthers run game is awesome. They match up really well in terms of getting to some of these gap scheme runs that have really crushed the Bills so far this year. So I would go with Chuba Hubbard on that one. Like I said, Brashard Smith, a nice bench hold. Maybe you could get by with him as a flex, but I think that would be a little bit too cute going with him over Hubbard.
All right, one coming in from the YouTube question here, where Action Pack in YouTube says, with Drake out, still rolling with Kirk and Superflex, or should I go with Snoop? What say you, Chris Allen?
I would still say you can roll with Kirk over Snoop in this matchup. Even with Bijan Robinson being the one that folks are going to be targeting for this matchup going against Miami, there still are at least enough other options. Bijan is also a solid pass catcher in and of himself. So if we're thinking about Mooney as a guy that can get elevated along with Pitts and Bijan, I'd say Kirk is fine.
All right, we are just getting rolling. There is so much to be afraid of this week, including this costume. But when we come back, players you do not need to fear, we'll lock some of them in coming up next. Welcome back to the Halloween edition of Fantasy Football Live. I'm Jason Fitz, hanging out with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, Justin Boone, or in this case, Bobby Boucher, Men in Black, and Flutie Flakes. And I'm your referee, your zebra. There we go. We're here all the way up till 1 p.m. to get you caught up on everything you need to know for your fantasy football lineups. But it's not just us. Our great teammate, Scott Pianowski, as yet unconfirmed what his costume is sitting in his couch. In my mind, he's still in full regalia, like maybe a full Incredible Hulk-like thing with green paint, the whole thing. But he's taking your questions. All you have to do is use the hashtag AskFFL. I just love the concept that he put himself in green paint just because he wanted to be part of it, even though he didn't have to. That's what I like. Let's take a look at some of the fantasy chatter, the most talked about players in the fantasy app. I love this one on Mecca Buka. Alex says, last week my wife left me for her personal trainer. I should have seen it coming. But I have to admit that Emeka getting back and seeing these projections have made all my sadness go away. Please ball out this weekend for me. Look, I love that. Like, hey, you know what? Whatever helps you get through it. You know, I'm not here to judge. Maybe here to judge a little bit, but not fully here to judge. Rico Dowdle, by the way, Max said, quote, David Tepper, just because you paid $33 million on a player doesn't mean you have to prove it I'll learn to read. Doesn't mean you have to prove to your two fans it was the right choice. Bench Chuba. That is harsh from Max on that. And then Kittle coming in says, this feels like another heavy-hitting blocking week for Kittle. Bad Houston offense combined with the stout pass defense. Leaning on McCaffrey again just to run the clock out and get it with the low-scoring win. Bad take? Is that a bad take? I don't know. I feel like everybody's angry right now. You can get in on the discuss tab. But Harmon, you in on this. Like, just feels like everybody needs a hug.
Yeah, that was... People are wild on the internet, bro. I mean, we know that, but that was some the guy whose wife left him for the personal trainer, but Emeka Egbuka making it all better. I thought that was going to be the most outrageous thing, and it just got weirder and weirder. So yeah, I mean, shout out to the people in the discuss tab. They're letting their feelings out there, and you know, week 8, like it's time to do that. I guess it's time to let your feelings out.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be in my feelings later in the show because we got a Rico Dowdle prediction coming that I'm just going to say it's shocking. Shock and awe. People are saying in the streets that it's headline worthy. All right, let's get to lock it in. Some matchup-proof players for week 8. We'll stick with Harmon here. We're going to start with Harmon on guys that you don't care who they're playing. They are going to score points. Who you got, Harmon?
Yeah, Stefon Diggs going against a tough Browns defense. I'm still locking him into my lineup for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Browns play a lot of man coverage, and Diggs, despite the fact that he's coming off the ACL, despite the fact that he's an older player, he is number 1 in yards per route run against man coverage among wide receivers who have run 30-plus routes on the season. He is still getting it done. The separation ability is there. The route running that he's well known for is very much still there. So he is still schematically in a good spot this week. I also like the fact that he has taken 40% of his snaps from the slot so far this year. So perimeter player Kayshon Boutte might be the guy who ends up running more routes in Denzel Ward's coverage, the top corner in Cleveland, rather than Stefon Diggs. And lastly, this is one of the 5 wide receivers on the season who has had 300-plus receiving yards and has yet to score a touchdown. So as we say in the industry, advanced analysis, he's #due. So I still like Diggs this week, even though it's a tough defensive matchup for the Patriots.
That I love that you're using like all that the #due. Who knew? That's inside stuff there. Justin Boone, give us the perspective from the Flutie Flake cabinet. What do we got here that's lock in?
I'm going with Dak Prescott against the Broncos, and I know this is not a good matchup for quarterbacks. Denver's the 5th hardest date for QBs on the year here, but Prescott has just been lights out this season. Doesn't matter the matchup. 4 straight top 10 fantasy finishes. He got CeeDee Lamb back. He's got such a great group of skill position players. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. This game has a huge projected point total of 50.5, so there are going to be points. There are going to be fireworks in this game. Dak is still going to get it done, so do not be afraid to play him against the Broncos. He's still a top 10 quarterback this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game for him. Chris Allen, what do you got?
I'll be looking to the Commanders and Chiefs game, and the wide receiver for Kansas City, Rashee Rice. He's back, and everybody that rostered him and put him in their lineups in week 7, they're rewarded with 2 touchdowns. So you don't need me to have him to say that he should be locked into your roster. But I would say, though, that looking at his usage from week 7, there's still more room for him to develop. He had only ran a route on 48% of Patrick Mahomes' dropbacks in week 7. So if we can see him start to expand a bit more in terms of how often he's going to be out there on the field, that should at least lend itself to some more fantasy points being scored or more consistent usage throughout the rest of the season. And going up against the Washington Commanders, I mean, their slot corner, Mike Sanders, he's allowing the 4th most yards per coverage snap of any interior defender right now through 7 weeks. So with the amount of how often Patrick Mahomes was looking towards Rashee Rice in his first game back, and also the defensive matchup going against Washington, Rashee Rice has to be locked into your lineup for week 8.
Yeah, I don't see many people in the chat today questioning Rashee. They sure were last week, but saw how that all played out. All right, I got sweating places I didn't know could sweat. I'm going to try and figure out how to take care of that. In the meantime, Matt, Chris, why don't you guys take over and get us some fantasy face-off?
All right, Chris, let's try to recover from the most disturbing toss of all time in sports media history there from Fitz, and let's get into some fantasy face-off here. We're talking Tez Johnson, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, wide receiver 6 to start the season, but now a guy that they've got to play an awful lot here because of injuries. And Chris, I think he played pretty well last week, could have even had a bigger game if Baker Mayfield was a little bit more accurate. But we're going to stack him up against some similarly ranked players here this week and decide if we're starting Tez or one of these bigger names. Let's start with Cleveland Browns wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Which way are you going? Tez Johnson, Jerry Jeudy?
Give me Tez Johnson. I can't do it with Jerry Jeudy anymore. We'll probably talk about him later on in the show. And while Jeudy has been one of the wide receiver ones from a target share standpoint, 21% targets through 7 weeks, I mean, right now it's 65% catchable target rate. That's 52nd out of 67 wide receivers with more than 150 routes. And as of right now with Dylan Gabriel, even when Gabriel has completed a touchdown pass, they've either gone to tight ends or running backs. And even when Joe Flacco was in there, they did go to wide receivers. They went to Cedric Tillman. He not even playing right now. So I have just some general concerns about that Browns passing game. So if I'm going to pick anybody between those two, give me Tez Johnson.
Even when the football does come his way and it's catchable, Jerry Jeudy leads the NFL in drops. So quite literally nothing is going right for Jerry Jeudy so far this year. I agree. I think Tez Johnson, just much better offensive ecosystem and a guy who's playing pretty well right now. I'm going that way as well. All right. A guy I've always had trouble with, Chris Allen. We're going to stack Tez Johnson up with Wan'Dale Robinson. Which way are we going here for week 8?
So in this one, I'll go Wan'Dale Robinson, even though they do have to have their divisional rematch up against the Eagles. So in those games, they can get a little nutty. But I'd say from an opportunity standpoint, to your point, Matt, we haven't seen the same PPR scam usage out of Wan'Dale Robinson that we had in years past. I mean, up to a 30% target rate, and that was just the last game. But still, I mean, even when they did play against the Eagles the last time, that 35-yard touchdown on Thursday night, that was one of those scramble drill type things along the right sideline where, yeah, a little bit fluky. But I would say from an opportunity standpoint and just the general matchup, I will say that Wan'Dale Robinson would be the better of those two options just for week 8, though.
Yeah, I think he's got the much higher target projection, right? Tez, though, he's a deep threat. He could make your week in just a couple of plays. So I think you kind of need to know what your lineup needs. You need that ceiling or do you need more of a trusty floor? I think just answering the question overall, I do think Wan'Dale projects a little bit better than Tez Johnson does here this week because Sterling Shepard will still be involved on some of those layup targets for Tampa Bay. All right, final guy here. I've been loving the last couple weeks starting Kayshon Boutte in some fill-in spots here, Chris, but we're going to stack him up with Tez Johnson. Which way are we going? Kayshon Boutte, Tez Johnson.
I'm going to go Tez Johnson in this one. It's kind of close, but the thing is with Boutte, because you were talking about how well Steph Diggs can match up in this game against the Browns. With Boutte, it's just been, where's the consistent usage at? Over the last 5 weeks, his target shares have been 9%, 18%, 11, 21, and 9. So he's been something of a volatile pass catcher where, as for Tez Johnson, we can see the path for him to be used in this offense powered by Baker Mayfield. So without Chris Godwin, without Mike Evans, I mean, that's where we can see Tez Johnson really start to get some more usage over Kayshon Boutte. My only concern, and I think you might have seen this as well, Matt, looking at the film, it's just the lack of rapport with Baker Mayfield. You talked about Mayfield missing Tez high on a couple of passes, and also the miscommunication on some hitches and some outbreaking routes as well. So that's really my only concern for Tez Johnson from an opportunity standpoint. I think he's a little bit better ranked for as compared to Kayshon Boutte.
And he has the much easier matchup. The Saints secondary is one you can get, especially in terms of the deep downfield plays that Tez Johnson wins on. I do agree that Kayshon Boutte has much better chemistry with Drake May than Tez Johnson with Baker Mayfield, but that can flip on any given week because Mayfield, we generally have him in the circle of trust. So I will give the slight edge to Tez Johnson over Kayshon Boutte in this one, but we showed the projections earlier. They're very, very close. All right, we have one last one from the YouTube chat here. Are we going Tez Johnson or Josh Downs this week? I'll answer this one here real quick, Chris, and throw it to you. I'll go Josh Downs for this one. As much as I like Alec Pierce, I talked about this earlier. You know, Josh Downs is one of my favorite wide receivers, a guy that gets open at all three levels, and he was leading the team in targets in the 3 games before he missed last week with a concussion. So good matchup for him, and I think a little bit more of a trusty player than Tez Johnson is. Where are you going for this week?
I could get with that. My only pushback would be it's just the systemic risk for Josh Downs in this matchup for them, where we can see all the touchdowns going to Jonathan Taylor versus any of the pass catchers. So that'd be my only general concern for Downs, because can we really see the same scenario, the jailbreak scenario that we saw in week 7, where the Chargers are pushing the Colts into a more pass-friendly type of script? I do not see that at all for them facing the Titans. So this could be just another game where we're looking at Jonathan Taylor getting into the box 3 times, and it's really just Josh Downs having a solid game from a PPR standpoint, maybe 4 for 50, 4 for 60, somewhere in there. So that'd be my only concern for Josh Downs over Tez Johnson.
Totally fair. All right, let's throw it back to the two guys taking up the full screen here. Let's see what Fitz and Boone have for us.
It is time to make your pick. I'm going to be honest, but like for anyone that ever saw Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which was a great scary movie if it had just been called Season of the Witch, like you wore the mask and it eventually took you over. I feel like that's happening here. I feel like every time they throw it back to me, more of the costume is swallowing me. So just check on me after the show. Like if the zebra comes and gets me, that's how I went out. Let's get to make your pick. We'll get some help for some people to figure out what's going on here. The first question comes from Lost Found DV Cooper. It says, need 2. Franklin, Noel, Austin III, Downs, or Pierce. We need to pick 2 of those. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about this one because it's kind of easy in my mind. We're going with Alec Pierce. It's a good matchup for him. I expect the Colts to put up a bunch of points. I know Harmon's on Alec Pierce, so whenever Harmon's on a receiver, you got to listen up to that. And then Franklin. I talked about Dak Prescott and the high-scoring game that could be. That's a great matchup for him going against the Cowboys. They got injuries in the secondary, so we're going with those 2 guys.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is that, you know, Noel looks the coolest on all those graphics pictures, so I just want to give a little bit of love to that. The Wolfman was a very cool play. The next one comes from SF Rebellion 77. Says, need help deciding which 2 to flex of these 4. Schultz, Marks, Mooney, and Downs. Make your pick. What do you think?
I mean, Mooney is just the obvious play now with London out, so we're going Mooney for sure. And then I'm going Woody Marks, and I talked about him on the Fantasy Forecast this week as a potential buy low, a guy that I think you could go out and could really become something in the second half of the season. And it's weird how it could happen because it's not like he's going to take over the backfield and have these positive game scripts and put up huge yards. You almost want them to be in close games or trailing because, and I mean, let's face it, the Texans are going to be a lot of those games. But in those contests, he's going to get a lot of work in the passing game. He's going to be able to step up there. Nick Chubb doesn't have much left in the tank, so let's go with Marks as the second guy.
All right, we'll get the next question in from Brandon. And Brandon, you know, here's the thing. Brandon says Pittman, Dobbs, Schultz, pick 2. I want to play Schultz, especially if Nico and Kirk are out this week. I don't know, Brandon. Like, I'm going to be your therapist for a minute. You asking for help or you telling us? Like, what are you doing here? But he says Pittman, Dobbs, Schultz, pick 2. He'd like Schultz. What do you think?
No, I'm going with the receivers. I think they have a better chance at scoring touchdowns. They're the number 1 receivers on their teams. I like the matchups for both of those guys. So it's Pittman and Dobbs for me. Schultz is just a volume play. As much as I'm high on Schultz as the top 10 guy that you could play this week, it's just a volume play, not necessarily a guy you expect to find the end zone. So let's stick with the receivers there.
See, Brandon, sometimes you just got to go out and you got to ask for the advice and then just listen. That's the best way to heal. All right, we're going to keep breaking down everything you need to know today, including a massive revenge game. Is it time for the Wrath of Rodgers, and what's it mean for your fantasy team? We'll break it down next. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. He's Matt Harmon. He's Chris Allen. He's Justin Boone. I'm Jason Fitz, and it's just another game. Or is it? Packers, Steelers. That's the best evil maniacal laugh I could do. Voice is too high. Green Bay at Pittsburgh. Taking this one. Should say the opposite. Yes, Green Bay at Pittsburgh. The Packers favored by 3. Over and under on this one. 45.5. Boone, what do you got your eyes on in this Aaron Rodgers matchup?
Is it another Aaron Rodgers revenge game? And I know people laugh at the revenge narrative, but Rodgers said it himself after week 1. He went up against the Jets and he talked about how much that game meant to him. He wanted to stick it to everybody in that Jets organization. And what did he do? He came out and threw 4 touchdowns in that contest. Last week, going up against the Bengals, 4 touchdowns in that one as well. This guy can still sling the ball. And now he's got reason to try to put up a big game against another former team in the Packers. I think he's definitely going to be able to do it in this game. Maybe not 4 touchdowns, but he is a worthy streaming option, a top 15 fantasy quarterback. And I want to see him do it. I love this. I love that he's fueled by that. I feel like I can be at times too. So let's go out there and have a huge game, Rodgers.
Yeah, I think he's fueled, but also there's some people in the Packers organization. This one's going to be really interesting. Chris, what do you got your eyes on?
So I'm kind of on the same lines as Boone here, because if Aaron Rodgers is going to have a revenge narrative, or at least be able to complete the revenge narrative, who else is it going to be passing to? I know DK Metcalf has popped up as the wide receiver one that they expected when they traded for him, but really we haven't seen a ton of other production from the other pass catchers involved. And of course, they're not going to be playing against my Bengals and their poor linebacking core and get not 1, but 2, 3 tight end touchdowns last week in primetime. So who is the wide receiver 2 in this offense? My vote would be for Calvin Austin, and folks are looking for some help off of the waiver wire. He might be a guy that you could slot in. I mean, before he went down, around 16% of the targets, that's what Austin was earning in that offense, and just short of 50% of the team's air yards. And he was working on the interior for the Steelers passing game, which would kind of lend itself to this type of matchup where you think they're going to try and send Micah Parsons after Aaron Rodgers as quickly as possible, and he would need to get rid of the ball in the short area of the field. But really for Austin, he's been working more downfield. So I'm wondering if this is going to be a shift or adjustment in how Arthur Smith tries to deploy him. And this is where we see that wide receiver 2 or the rest of that pass game start to take off outside of what Rodgers and Metcalf have been able to create on the field.
All right, Harmon, what do you got your eyes up on in this revenge matchup?
Yeah, I talk about the Packers pass catchers way too often, so let me do it one more time here. This group kind of consolidated from a playing time perspective last week around Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft, and Matthew Golden, who all ran a route on more than 80% of the dropbacks last week. That is very, very unusual for the Packers, who love to rotate their wide receivers. I think the question is this sustainable going forward? For the first 2 guys, I think it definitely is. Romeo Doubs, man, he's playing great football this year. At times, I thought he was more of that like sacrificial X receiver. He has been a guy who is winning on his routes at all 3 levels. I've been very impressed with him. I think he is an underrated fantasy flex right now. Tucker Kraft is a badass. He's going to continue to play every single week. Matthew Golden is a guy who's interesting. He's got this hip injury that he picked up late in the week. Christian Watson is also back. And that's interesting because Watson tore his ACL on January 5th of this year. He is not long off that injury, so how much can he really play? I think that's going to be an interesting spot to watch, because for fantasy managers who need a desperation start, I do think Matthew Golden profiles well in this game because he has all the speed in the world. He's playing good football in isolation, and he's going against the Steelers secondary that is old and slow. So young, fast, greater than old and slow. That's some basic analysis for you guys to take into your leagues this week.
Chris, let's get this YouTube question over to you. Shelton has asked us, Daniel Jones or Jordan Love this weekend?
Between those 2, I will take Jordan Love because, like I was saying earlier, my concern for any of the pass catchers attached to Indianapolis, you could just see Jonathan Taylor working his way into the end zone enough that there's not going to be enough production for Daniel Jones to be able to hang your hat on that from a quarterback perspective. So I'll take Jordan Love and the pass catchers that should be able to dunk on this Steelers defense, just like we saw Joe Flacco and my Bengals do about a week ago.
All right, speaking of getting dunked on, it's time for Primetime Picks. You guys know what we do. We have a snake draft. We go through. We pick from 3 different games. And I'm just going to be honest. At this point, we're getting our asses kicked. Like, it is absolutely it's astronomical. And I think too, like if we're being real, I just feel like 99% of the time, whoever Justin Boone picks is going to work out, and the rest of us are doomed. Last week was no different than that. You see Boone, 77.5 points. Like he could have banked half of those points and almost won. So absolutely astronomical butt whooping. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go as we have every single week. We are in the same order that we have been in for weeks at this point. We are near the mercy rule at this point, where suddenly we just don't let Boone pick at all, but he will pick last. We will go in reverse order. As you see there, Harmon will be on the board first. Our 3 games: Tennessee, Indiana, gross; Green Bay, Pittsburgh; Washington, Kansas City. Harmon, you do realize the objective is to win a week, right? Like just 1 week, dude. 1 week.
Anyways, yeah, if people notice, I scored 22 points last week. That was all from one player. I took 2 zeros last week. So no getting cute this week. No nonsense. We're taking Jonathan Taylor at the first overall pick, and we are praying that this is another 3-touchdown week, because my God, I need all the help I can get.
I'm just curious.
All right, so
cute last week. I don't know. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry, it's just I was too far back. Go ahead.
Right.
Stay back
I'll go
in
ahead.
there.
I will go the same route as Harmon. I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs. I mean, I'll just take the pencil in or pen in a touchdown for him on a weekly basis. I need the points at this point.
I'm not going to get cute. I'm just going to go with Rashee Rice because I'm scared to go anywhere else. So I'm going with Rashee Rice. Maybe a 7-touchdown game, and I'll still lose. Boone, you got the next 2 picks to just wipe the floor with us. Would you like to do a dance as you do it, or do you have a prepared speech? Anything you'd like to say?
Maybe we should increase the degree of difficulty, and I can only pick guys who have the same last name. So let's go with Jaylen Warren and Tyler Warren here. I think they're both going to lead their teams. I think they're nice picks at the end. Although I will say, not as nice as you guys were to me last week when I got CMC and Jahmyr Gibbs at the end of the first and the start of the second.
Oh.
Yeah, that was tough. That was a poor decision.
Yeah, but can we acknowledge the fact that both had just the type of game that, I don't want to talk about it. I'm angry still. Look, I'm sitting here and I've worked with Matt Harmon long enough that there are certain names that are just ingrained in my head, and one of them is Michael Pittman. So I'm just going to take Pittman here because, frankly, I've heard about him for enough years. It's time he got me some points after listening to Harmon talk about him. So, Harmon, I'm taking this, and I'm just going nanny, nanny, boo-boo the whole time I do it just to talk trash to you. That means, Chris, you're up next.
I probably should have just kept the bit going and gone with Hollywood Brown out of that Chiefs-Commanders game, at least have some fun while trying to catch up in points. But I'm going to go with Isaiah Pacheco because if there's somebody out of that group that I hope can fall into the end zone with the Hunt injury and all of that, I'll think Pacheco has a shot.
Harmon now gets the best advantage in all of sports. He gets to turn 2 straight picks, although we see how that's working out.
This is literally not the best advantage in all of sports, but thanks. And also, Fitz, let's remind people the rules of the contest. I couldn't take Michael Pittman here. This guy doesn't even – I should be awarded his win because he doesn't even know how this contest is working. Please stay in your costume. No responses to that statement. Okay, I'm going to go with Romeo Doubs and Deebo Samuel here. Maybe I didn't learn my lesson taking an older player coming off an injury because I did that with George Kittle and Mike Evans and took those 2 zeros last week, but I think Deebo's in a pretty decent spot here, so I will go him with my 3rd pick.
I have no comment about your Michael Pittman trash talking. Chris, go ahead.
So I'll take Shamir DK, the last one for mine. He at least popped off from a target share standpoint in the last week's game, in their first week, without having Brian Callahan as their offensive coach. So I'll at least see if that's going to work out for me. But again, with these games, it's so tough to find a good fantasy scorer out of this at this point. So I'll take DK.
The one of our great analysts just a few minutes ago was talking about how well Tucker Kraft has been playing. And I'm going to take his advice right here, and I'm going to walk right up to the mic, and I'm going to select me some Kraft mac and cheese to finish this draft off for me. Feeling pretty good about that one as I hand it back to Boone. Boone, do you even want to take a 3rd player, or do you just want to see if you can beat us with 2?
Well, there's part of me that wants to take Hollywood Brown just to see if I can win with him, even though Chris wasn't able to. But I'm going to play it smart. I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy. Let's get on into the Chiefs bandwagon. I think they're going to put up a ton of points, and I think Worthy's the last man available here who's worth picking on that team.
I desperately want us all to have sumo suits at the Super Bowl and just fight all of this out. It's the only way we're ever going to feel better about it. There are picks If there's anything I know, if you have either of the Warrens or Xavier Worthy, you are about to have the best weekend of your fantasy life, thanks to Justin Boone. Let's get to the hurry up offense. YouTube chat questions galore coming in, so I want to get a bunch of them in. And the first one comes from Tongshanks28. I have no idea what that means. He says, start Dalton Kincaid or Cade Otton in full PPR. What do you think, Harmon?
Yeah, I'm going to go Dalton Kincaid on that one. I know Cade Otton theoretically gets a bump with some of these pass catchers banged up, but I think from a receiving workload standpoint, Kincaid gets the edge there.
Ooh, with time to spare, I will go to Chris Allen on the next one from the YouTube chat. The next one from the YouTube chat comes from Rock Bottom 1436, who says, with Lamar out, Mariota or Stroud? What do you think, Chris?
I'll go Marcus Mariota on that one. We'll talk about him here in a little bit, but I think from the rushing standpoint, Mariota at least gives you at least a floor there. And with having both Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel back for this game, while they are facing a stout Kansas City secondary, there's enough there for at least to have a little bit more confidence in Mariota than CJ Stroud.
All right, the next question in the YouTube chat comes from, looks like Joseph, I don't know. Pollard, Spears, or Van Jefferson? What do you got for us, Boone? Pollard, Spears, or Van Jefferson?
I'd just like to, take a moment here for this person's team because they are obviously not going to win this week if they're picking from these guys. I would go with Tony Pollard.
Damn.
I guess. Like he's the lead back in the Titans, but none of these guys are going to have good games this week. I bet there's someone else on the waiver wire you could pick up and play over these guys. Go check my rankings. You'll find somebody else.
Oh, that's amazing. The next question comes from Headley Dubler, 9812. Give the governor a harump. Says, good afternoon, boys. Full PPR. Marks or Otton in the flex playing Kittle in tight end spot. What do you think, Harmon?
Yeah, I'll go with Woody Marks on that one. I'm just cursed Cade Otton in back-to-back questions, so congratulations on scoring a touchdown this week, Cade Otton. But yeah, Woody Marks does project for a pass-catching role against a defense that flies around, so I'll go with Woody Marks. I think he's a pretty viable flex this week.
Now, the breaking news there is Cade Otton's about to have a career day. That's the way this just goes.
Yeah.
The next one from @GChuck. G-Chuck says, full PPR flex, Terry McLaurin or Franklin. What do you think, Chris?
I know I was singing his praises earlier for Troy Franklin, but I'll go Terry McLaurin in this one. This should be a matchup where they're forced to throw to keep up with the Chiefs' offense. And also Terry McLaurin, where he's used downfield, at least it lends itself to some of those explosive plays that you need in order to really make bank on your matchup. So I'll go McLaurin here.
Right. The next question comes in from a request hotline because they obviously want to talk to Matt. So, Harmon, this one comes from Mijo Meldelt, who says, Matt, love the show. Listen to you every morning. We need more Scotty P. Question, how confident are you with Pickens this week versus Denver? What say you, good sir?
Well, appreciate you and agree with everything you're saying here. I will go in terms of confidence level with George Pickens. I actually think there's still a chance. I mean, number one, I'm playing him if I have him. There's a chance that CeeDee Lamb gets followed by Patrick Surtain, but there's also a chance on the perimeter it's Pickens. I'm still pretty confident I'm playing him this weekend.
Yeah, and don't forget you can check out Yahoo Fantasy Forecast podcast every single day. So get up there and listen to more Harmon. And the more Harmon, the better. All right, the next question comes in. It says, #AskFFL. Shaheed Ferguson, Mooney, pick one to flex in half PPR. Already starting Kraft at tight end. Thinking of starting 2 tight ends on tight end day. What say you experts? Boone, you haven't gotten in a minute. Why don't you take this one?
Another easy one for me. With the injury to London, we're going with Mooney here. I know Ferguson's got a lot of volume lately, but with CeeDee Lamb back, with the tougher matchup, I'm going to bump him down a little bit. I'm taking Mooney as the number 1 receiver for the Falcons this week.
Keep the questions coming. We will get more of them answered as we are here all the way up till 1 o'clock to make sure that we get you set on everything you need to know for your rosters. Yes, this is how I chose to dress today. Coming up next, the fantasy graveyard players that we are ready to absolutely bury and move on from. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to the Halloween edition of Fantasy Football Live. I'm your host, Jason Fitz, hanging out with Matt Harmon, Chris Allen, Justin Boone. Or in today's case, I'm the referee, the Zebra, hanging out with Bobby Boucher, Men in Black, and Flutie Flakes. So this is how we're going to get you all the way to 1 p.m. on the Halloween edition. We're having a blast. We hope you guys are too. We appreciate everybody taking the time to comment in the YouTube chat. We're going to get more questions in, obviously. And thanks to everybody who watches us wherever you get your free TV or on yahoosports.tv. Having a blast. All right, let's get to some of the actives, inactives. In case you missed it earlier, there is some big news here. Now, we knew Lamar Jackson inactive, Tyler Algier and Dalton Kincaid active. The big news this morning, Drake London inactive. Chris, we've had a little bit to digest this. How are we feeling about this now? What are we doing?
So if you've got Mooney or you have the chance to pick him up, I would say that if you are hurting at the wide receiver position, Mooney does grade out as one of those guys that is viable for a spot start. Throughout most of the 2024 season, when he was playing with Kirk Cousins, Mooney was averaging about 22% of the team's targets and sitting at around 13 to 14 PPR points per game. So with the level of opportunity that Mooney is going to have now with Cousins back under center and going up against a Dolphins secondary that has been beatable throughout most of the season so far, Mooney should be one of those guys that, again, if you are getting hurt by either just injuries or, of course, the bye weeks as well, this should be a guy that you can plug into your lineup for week 8.
All right, we did get a question in here, Boone. I want to get to you. Hi, guys. Marks or Algier RB2? And that comes from Brandon, I believe it is. So what do you think? Marks or Algier RB2?
I don't want to say this is a coin flip, but it's pretty much a coin flip. I have them ranked back to back. I would go with Marks just because, like I said earlier, I think he's got a shot to be the lead back in his backfield. I think he's going to get a bunch of work in the passing game, especially with those receivers out for the Texans. But Algier has a great shot to put up points against that Dolphins defense. They're going to have to lean on the run. He might find the end zone. So I think both these guys are decent plays. I would lean towards Marks, though.
All right, we'll keep the questions coming. We will get more of them throughout the course of the show, but we get one more time, I believe, of a Monday Night Football doubleheader this season. So let's get into some of that Monday Night Football action. No, never mind. We don't get another doubleheader. We just have a Monday Night Football game. I can read. Monday Night Football, Commanders at Chiefs. Chiefs favored by a whopping 11.5 on this one. The over-under 48. That's Monday night, 8:15 p.m. So, Chris Allen, what do you make on this game?
So I'll go to the other side first because we were talking about the Chiefs and Rashee Rice and all the rest of those guys. So let's look at the Commanders real quick. And I was talking about Marcus Mariota and his potential as a streaming candidate for quarterbacks. I think it's viable because in his 2 starts so far throughout the season with Jaden Daniels sidelined, Mariota, he's averaged 30 yards per game on the ground, so at least it gives you some idea of a potential floor for him. And he's going up against the Chief defense where talked earlier about the secondary. Their rush defense has been something of a beatable proposition for opposing quarterbacks. Justin Herbert got 32 yards against him. Jalen Hurts, 15 yards and a touchdown. Even Russell Wilson, back when he was starting, 27 yards. And, of course, Lamar Jackson got him for 48. It's the 6th most yards per game allowed to rushing quarterbacks. So there is something of a floor there for Marcus Mariota. But now, of course, their pass rush, 12th in pressure rate and 4th fewest passing yards per game allowed. So it's going to be something of a tough out for Mariota. But with Terry McLaurin there, Deebo Samuel also there to help him as well, I would say that, again, if you're hurting at the quarterback position or need a backup plan, Mariota at least should be able to slot in and give you at least some help at the position for week 8.
All right, Harmon, what you got your eyes on for Monday Night Football?
Yeah, last week only confirmed to me that we're going to see the rest of the season Patrick Mahomes and Rashee Rice just go absolutely crazy and demolish zone coverage all season long. Patrick Mahomes on the year ranks third in adjusted yards per attempt and second in EPA per dropback when going against zone coverage. Rashee Rice comes immediately, gets dropped right back into that role where he is moving around the formation. He's a slot heavy guy. He's getting the short layup targets against zone coverage. At one point in last week's game, they got him singled up in zone coverage across from Devin White, the linebacker for the Raiders, which is an unbelievable mismatch. In this game here particularly, the Washington Commanders give up the 2nd most points per dropback when they're in zone coverage according to Fantasy Points data. So that's already a favor in the note towards the Chiefs and Rashee Rice and Patrick Mahomes. But you look at those linebackers too for Washington, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu. They're really good at going downhill, coming at you in the run game. Not so much going side to side. So I think we're going to see a lot of motion, a lot of quick inbreakers, quick outbreakers for Rashee Rice. You could pretty much just write 5 catches in pencil every single week and go from there. I think he definitely exceeds that number by quite a bit in this game.
All right, Boone, what do you got your eye on this one?
I'm going a little further down on that Chiefs roster. I think Rashard Smith is a sneaky flex option here. And he's somebody that I've written about all season in my Deep Stashes column, going all the way back to week 1, to be honest. And it was never that he was going to take over this backfield and become like a league winner and take over and be a workhorse back. But he's a guy that could earn a role there, kind of like Jerick McKinnon used to be in this offense, right? A pass catcher, sort of a versatile weapon for them. And we're starting to see that happen. Now, Kareem Hunt is going to play in this game, so it's still going to be a 3-man backfield here. But last week, we saw Smith get very involved. 14 carries, 39 yards, 5 catches for 42 yards. It was a blowout. They destroyed the Raiders. And yet, you mentioned off the top there, they are huge favorites this week again. I think he's somebody that they are going to continue to get work in this backfield behind Pacheco, and I think ahead of Kareem Hunt moving forward. And if the game script just goes crazy like it did last week, we're going to see him get a ton of volume. So he's a guy that I think should be rostered everywhere, and he's a guy that I think you could put in your lineup as a flex play.
Yeah, well, Boone just put me in my graveyard because he reminded me of last week's football on the field. I'll let you guys get to your fantasy graveyard now. Boone, Chris, what do you guys got for us?
All right, Chris, we're heading to the graveyard. It's going to get a little spooky here. Let's talk about a couple players that people can just get rid of. People can just put them down into the dirt. Don't think about them again. Get them off of your roster. Let somebody else pick them up if they want to, or more likely, just put them on the waiver wire where they're going to stay for the rest of this season. Who do you got?
So I talked a bit about him earlier. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver for the Browns, and even, let's say, even from an opportunity standpoint, he's still getting plus 20% of the team's targets. When are folks really going to feel confident in having him as their starting wide receiver on their fantasy teams? So through 7 games so far, the Browns are 17th in dropback rate. And right now, I mean, looking at it since week 1, I mean, 29%, like 29th in rate of throws to wide receivers. And even since Gabriel took over, it hasn't improved at all in terms of how often he's looking to the wide receiver position. We've talked more about Harold Fannin Jr., David Njoku, even any of the running backs that have operated as pass catchers for the Browns. Those have been the guys we've been looking to, really not Jerry Jeudy. And now looking at this upcoming matchup against the Patriots, not one that you would want to try and target from a wide receiver standpoint. And of course, in week 9, the Cleveland Browns are going to go on bye. And coming out of their bye, they face the Jets, Ravens, and the Raiders. And now while those might be matchups that you'd want to target from a wide receiver standpoint, they're also ones that you would want to target from a rushing standpoint as well. So I just see this as more of, let's get Quinshon Judkins rolling. Let's continue to integrate Harold Fannin into the offense and less towards Jerry Jeudy. So I have no problems with dropping Jeudy on the waiver wire, because I doubt even if you dropped him, people would be in a rush to pick him up. So get him off your roster, find somebody else that you can potentially start in your rosters for week 8 and beyond.
And it's funny, he is kind of one of those names where, like, you see the name and you think, okay, the production should be there. Maybe I should pick him up. And yet, yeah, he just does not put up numbers most weeks. So not somebody that you can have faith in your lineup. I think the guy I'm going to bring up here, it's also a receiver. I think he's in the exact same boat. It's Calvin Ridley on the Titans. He's rostered in 75% of leagues. One good game this season. That is it, Chris. You know, he's not playing this week. Even if he was, the last time he played the Colts, he only caught 1 of his 7 targets earlier this season. So if he comes back from the hamstring injury in week 9, you know, he has to go up against the Chargers, who are the 8th hardest matchup for fantasy receivers. Then he has a bye. Then after that, he's got to go up against the Texans, who are the 6th hardest matchup for fantasy receivers. And after that, down the stretch, he's got games against the Seahawks and the Browns and the Chiefs. Some very tough matchups. I just don't think you're going to feel good about having Ridley in your lineup. So though he's a guy kind of like Jeudy, where you see that name, you don't think he should necessarily be on the waiver wire, I absolutely think you can drop him, and maybe you will get lucky and someone else will pick this guy up, and then they can have to deal with that problem on their roster. But we're going to get out of the graveyard. It is too scary here for us. Let's get Fitz and Harmon back in here.
Oh, too scary, but never too scary for wicked wagers. Oh! I really got to stop trying with the laughs. It doesn't work. It doesn't get any better. This is where we try and find a couple of prop actions, little things that we like across the board. Give me something that you got your eye on, Harmon, that you think could be an interesting prop for everybody.
Yeah, you want to talk about scary. How about this Jets defense having to go against the Bengals passing game, specifically Jamar Chase without Sauce Gardner in the mix here? I'm looking at Jamar Chase over 87.5 receiving yards, minus 115 right now. Jamar Chase is going to go crazy in this game. Joe Flacco understands the assignment. Get the football to his playmakers. Chase averages over 17 targets in the last 2 weeks with Joe Flacco. Just crazy stuff. He's pummeling him with targets. I expect that to happen here this week without anyone that can cover him in the secondary.
Yeah, look, I love that call by you. And by the way, I don't think this is you tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this is any sort of revelation of the greatness of Joe Flacco. It's just hey, if we can at least get competent quarterbacking that understands how to get the ball to these receivers, we're going to see big numbers, right? This isn't I think we should calm down a little bit on Joe Flacco, but it's proof to how good Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are.
I mean, Flacco, after the game, fits to your point when they were trying to interview him on Thursday night. He's like, what are you talking to me for? I just throw the football to Jamar Chase and let him make plays. So even Joe Flacco agrees with you that the main story here is the greatness of Jamar Chase.
Well, I'm going to give you a wager that is not I'm going out there. All right, I'm going out there, but I'm going out there big. And usually when I go out there big, this is like a pizza bet. No, I actually put, for me, a pretty good little chunk on this one. Rico Dowdle over 100 yards. And when I say over 100 yards, I mean that was at plus 600 on the sports book. That is a substantial payout to me. And this is all about something you mentioned earlier, Harmon, that I think we really need to focus more on. For all the conversation about the Bills and the up and down this season, their run defense stinks. 31st in the league against the run. They are getting run on. And what you have here is a hot hand at the running back. And at some point, as much as we're looking at, well, how much work are they going to give Chuba and what's that look like? You have a hot hand at the running back position and you have a backup quarterback. So this is where, okay, now they're just going to key in and stop the run. I don't think that the Bills have been ineffective stopping the run because they haven't been focused on it. I think they've been ineffective at it because they're not good at it. So they're still not going to be good at it with Andy Dalton, and it's going to have to happen even more. So all it takes is 1 or 2 big runs, and Rico will suddenly get the bulk of the work. So even though this feels wild, because over 100 yards, like I said, plus 600, I confidently put it out there because I think a hot running back against a trash defense against the run, when you've got this split with Andy Dalton, he's going to get the carries. Have I lost my mind?
I mean, it's an aggressive one, but that's why the odds are what they're at, and I love it. Look, I've got Rico Dowdle on a couple fantasy teams, so I'm very much hoping you're right. And I do think that this Panthers run game is so detailed. The tight ends are blocking really well. The offensive line, despite cycling through some injuries, is also playing really well. I think they match up very well against that Bills run defense right now.
I'm just going to let the world know, if Rico Dowdle goes for over 100 yards and the Cowboys win today, I might buy an actual zebra. Everything's on those two things. Let's just see what happens. I'm not sure I legally can't, but I'll find out. Let's get to some scary predictions for Week 8. We will go around the horn with this one. Chris, what do you? Give me a scary prediction you've got your eye on.
Scary prediction is actually, it's probably going to be scary for opposing managers if they're facing Courtland Sutton, because I can see him getting into the top 8 from a wide receiver standpoint here in Week 8 because of the matchup that we've got. I mean, if any defense has us questioning or at least potentially advocating for Chris Moore being in your lineup because they're going to face him, that's probably bad, because when the Commanders wound up facing the Dallas defense, we were looking at Chris Moore, Jaylin Lane, and some of the other guys from the other ancillary pass catchers from Washington. That's been the case throughout the entire season. Dallas is averaging about 160, 170 yards per game allowed to the wide receivers. And like we were talking earlier, Courtland Sutton is that number 1 option for Bo Nix. So with the opportunity and also the game environment, Courtland Sutton being in the top 8, that's where I'm seeing as the scary prediction for Week 8.
Oh, I like that scary prediction a lot out of that game. Let's go to Foodie Flakes. Boone, what do you got for a scary prediction?
I'm going back to that Cowboys-Broncos game. I think there's going to be a ton of points there. J.K. Dobbins finishes as a top 5 fantasy back this week. And despite the fact that he opened the season with touchdowns in 4 of the first 5 weeks, he's just the RB21 on the season. He's coming off 2 sort of down games from a fantasy perspective. Thankfully, Week 8, the Cowboys defense, they are a springboard for fantasy running backs. They're giving up the 5th most fantasy points to the position. And prior to last week's game, which I think we could sort of chalk up to the Commanders being shorthanded, they really didn't get much going on the ground. But you look back, prior to that, 5 of the first 6 starters that they faced this season had very strong fantasy results. You look at Rico Dowdle with that 239 scrimmage yards and a touchdown game. Breece Hall, 155 yards. Josh Jacobs, 157 and 2 TDs. Cam Scatterbo, 59 yards and a touchdown. Even Saquon Barkley back in the opener. Saquon Barkley has not had a very good year. He had 84 yards and a touchdown against this defense. So I think Dobbins is about to have his best fantasy performance of the year in a game where the Broncos are favored, in a game where the Broncos are at home, and in a game where there is a very high projected point total. So I think he is going to put up a bunch of those points today.
You know, I'm going to stay on that game for a second and just give you my scary predictions. If you've been listening to Yahoo Sports Daily ever since the beginning of the year, I've been loudly screaming, I don't care how bad the Cowboys defense is, their offense is so good, they're going to the playoffs. This is going to be the week where we actually see that come to fruition. Because if you want a scary prediction, bench your Broncos defense too. For all we've been talking about how the Cowboys defense is an abject disaster, and it is, I believe this is the week that the Cowboys absolutely show you on offense they can take it to literally anybody, and they will. I think they win this game outright, frankly, but I also think that they put up a ton of points and yards in the process. I don't think there's a bad play if you want to score points in this game. I don't think there's a bad play across the board unless you're talking about defense. And if you're used to just being able to park the Broncos defense out there and feel like you got something, you don't this week. I think the Broncos are going to lose this game, and I think that there's going to be points and yardage galore on both sides of this one. So I'll give you the other side of it. Harmon, give me your scary prediction for this week.
I think Devontae Smith leads all wide receivers in fantasy points this week with A.J. Brown out. He's a great receiver in his own right. I think he's actually played better in isolation than A.J. Brown this year. He's been great against man coverage. The Giants run a lot of man coverage. But if you want to make it even scarier, I think Jahan Dotson could even be viable in this game. I am a long time, maybe way too long time, Jahan Dotson kind of truther. I think he is a solid player, not a great player, but a solid player. And I think he pops up for some usability here this week. If you are absolutely disgustingly desperate, I think Dotson gives you a little something against this Giants defense.
All right, before we get to hurry up offense, Chris, I want to get your thoughts. We got a poll out here on YouTube, and this is the question. It came down to a very close answer on it, so I want your thoughts on these three players from it. Which player is a fantasy treat this week? Not a trick, but a treat. And our choices were Jamar, Rachaad White, and Odunze. It came out very close out of those three. What are we thinking?
Oh, come on. Y'all see the hats behind me. Like, who am I going to pick out of that group? It has to be Jamar. The man just had 23 targets in his last game, and going up against a Jets secondary that's not going to have their CB1 out in the field. And while I know that the targets can get dispersed between Jamar, T, and then we might even see Chase Brown get mixed in as well. I mean, Jamar Chase, it has to be, out of that group, it has to be Uno, for sure.
All right, well, the results on that one, Jamar Chase got 44%, Rachaad White 32%, Odunze 21%, and then Scary Terry made an appearance for 3%. Don't know how he got in there. All right, let's go to hurry up offense. We will put up the questions. We'll put up 25 seconds, and we will answer as many as we can possibly get through. The first one comes from Joel, who says, half PPR, Romeo Doubs, Jay Higgins, or Tet McMillan. Need one at flex, please, and thank you. So polite. What do you think, Boone?
I think we're getting a little too cute here. I think Tet McMillan is the guy. I'm almost interested to see what this offense looks like with Andy Dalton out there. Even though they're going up against my Bills, I don't necessarily want to see them have a big day, but I think Andy Dalton can keep this passing attack moving, and I think Tet McMillan is a true star. You want to go with him.
I swear to God, this costume is inflating more on me. It's going to eat me. Sean is the next question coming in. Sean says, full PPR, Golden Marks or Kittle. Warren is starting tight end. What do you think, Harmon?
Yeah, maybe I'm going to look like an idiot in hindsight here, but I just don't think Kittle belongs in start sit questions. Like, I know it's obviously weird to flex a tight end, start two of these guys, but he had the 0 last week. Again, you just got to eat that and move on. Kittle is too good to be someone who is on your bench despite what happened last week.
Well, and the guy in the zebra costume is never allowed to tell you that you look like an idiot, so you're right on that one. John, coming up next, John says, Menange, Tyler Algier, or Alec Pierce. What do you think, Chris?
Out of that group, it's either one of the two running backs. We were talking earlier about the Colts passing game, the systemic risk for that game environment. I will look at Tyler Algier, even though he did come in on the injury report earlier, but going up against Miami's defense, where we've just seen running back after running back plow their way into the end zone. Bijan Robinson will get his, but so should Tyler Algier.
All right, let's go to Emmett with the next question. Emmett Crowder says, DK or Rachaad White? What do you think, Boone?
I think I'm going Rachaad White here. I mean, I talked about it off the top of the show. I think he's somebody that's in a great position to come through in a game where they're favored, in a game where they need him. I think he just looks fantastic this year, too. In years past, we kind of viewed him as just like a passing down back. Didn't necessarily get it done as well on the ground, but this year he's done a fantastic job filling in for Bucky Irving. I think he's going to have a huge day as a top 10 back this week.
You know, I'm going to double up and get Boone to take the next one because the next one comes from Thrillums. And Thrillum says, been a fan since the Stronghold days. Need one. Mooney, Pierce to Jay Higgins, half PPR. Bet I'm the first to message from Newfoundland in Canada. Go Jays! I figured the Buffalo type maybe. Go ahead.
Go Jays is right. I love it. Love to hear from fellow Canadians. Absolutely. And for this one, I mean, the Mooney questions, I don't know if they came in before we got the Drake London news, but it makes it fairly easy. You got to go with Darnell Mooney this week.
Shout out to Canada for watching and hanging out with us. We appreciate that. The next question, I can't even pretend to read that name, but I won't try. I'm in buy hell, and I have to pick between Downs, Pierce, and Noel. What do you think, Harmon?
Oh, man. Yeah, I love Josh Downs and I love Jalen Noel. Those guys are two of my favorite wide receivers. I just think you might have to go Alec Pierce here simply because he's going to be on the field the most. He's an every snap player because of that X receiver role. So like Chris mentioned earlier, there's some systemic risk with Downs being cycled on and off the field if they go run heavy. So I would go Pierce this week.
I'm still trying to finish. Sahasma. Well, I got nothing. I got nothing. Usually, I'm totally out on that one. This one might be much easier for me. No, it's not. What is that? The Lesink? I don't know. Brashard Smith or Travion Henderson PPR. I'm down bad. I feel that all the way in my veins. What do you got, Chris?
He's down bad. Travion Henderson's down even worse. Vrabel talking about Terrell Jennings as their 5-minute back. The guy can't even get on the field for more than 2 snaps a game now, even though Austin Eckler has been out for the past couple of weeks. Now you have to go with Brashard Smith. Better offense, also an easier path to opportunities in his offense, so it has to be Smith.
Now they're getting me one I think I can say. The next one comes from Gumdrop Tarts. I see that one I can handle. No, it doesn't. Tim Bob, 27. Where we go? I'll follow you guys. Gumdrop Tarts comes. Judkins are one of the Panthers running backs. The matchup for Judd doesn't look good, but great for Rico and Chuba. Torn, what do you think? We'll go to Boone on this one.
I'm going with Judkins. I totally agree with everything that the first is saying here, that the matchup for Judkins is not great. The Patriots have been very strong against running backs. And yet we've seen Judkins come through in bad matchups before this season multiple times, to be honest. So I think he's the guy that you're going to want to play here. As much as the Panthers running backs are great, they have to split the work.
All right, let's see which one we got coming up next on the charts. We'll get this one from Gavin Davadoo. Says Romeo Dobbs or Wan'Dale Robinson. I already have Jefferson who played and Tez Johnson in the lineup. Harmon, what do you say to Gavin Davadoo?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Romeo Dobbs here. I expect him to be really involved. He's, again, almost an every snap player. He's playing the best football of his career right now. His route running has really, really improved. And this Steelers defense, we think of it as a good unit. It's not, especially in the secondary. So I think Dobbs can get going here.
Do you want to give him a Gabba-Dabba-Doo? Harmon, you want to give us a Gabba-Dabba-Doo? No?
No, I'm all set.
No? Okay, he's all set. Smoking Aces.
Maybe next Halloween.
Smoking Aces NYC. We got him to do the Bobby Boucher. That's all we can hope for here. It says, Harold Fanning or Scary Terry in the flex. Already have Kittle as tight end and Metcalf Debo wide receiver. Thanks, guys. Chris Allen, what do you think?
Oh, so now seeing the context for it, I was going to say Scary Terry for sure, but if he's also rostering Debo at wide receiver, that makes it tough to also put in Terry. So even with the Njoku potentially going to be in for this game, I'll go Harold Fannin then.
Next one comes from Solstice Bird. Solstice Bird says, ask FFL, should I start Debo Samuel or Krosky Merritt on flex this weekend? Please let me know. What do you think? Oh, I guess I should say somebody. Boone, what do you think on this one?
I'm going to go with Debo Samuel. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt right now is a tough one. The matchup isn't great for him. When they fall behind in games, he doesn't catch a lot of passes, so he needs to break a big run. He needs to find the end zone. I would go with Debo in this game. I think they're going to be trailing. They're going to have to throw a bunch, and they scheme some stuff up to Debo as well.
Harmon, one more for you. This one's interesting. Jackson Dart or Jordan Love 4-point passing league. What do you think?
Oh, man, that is a close one here. Jackson Dart obviously had a great. I literally have these guys 10 and 11 in the rankings. I do have Jackson Dart one spot ahead simply because you can trust that rushing ability with him. 4 points passing league. I mean, that doesn't really move the needle all that much for me. So I think that rushing floor gives the bump to Jackson Dart just slightly ahead of Jordan Love in what I do think is a good matchup.
We got to give a huge shout out to Dan and Chan and everybody behind the scenes that did a great job of creating this Halloween episode. We appreciate you guys embracing our silliness for the course of this. We will be back next Sunday, as we are every week at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, to help you get your lineup set. And we're around all week. You can check out Yahoo Sports Daily, hanging out with me 9 to 11, Monday through Friday. And also check out the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast live on Yahoo Fantasy YouTube. Good luck with your matchups. Eat your Flutie Flakes. You'll never regret it. We appreciate you hanging out. Come back, see us again next week.